The Battle of Five Armies was the culmination of the Longbeards' quest to reclaim their former seat of Erebor underneath the Lonely Mountain, which had been stolen from them by Smaug the Golden 2 centuries prior, along with a, quite literal, mountain of riches and heirlooms of the House of Durin. However, more hinged on the outcome of the quest than simply the reclamation of lost treasure. Far more than anyone in the company, except perhaps Gandalf, who had orchestrated the whole affair, ever realized. Unbeknownst to many amongst the mortal races, war was again brewing in Middle-earth. Sauron had yet to declare himself openly, but the insidious rumblings of his return were beginning to be felt across the world. Goblins in the north had multiplied, making travel through the mountains difficult and dangerous. Many pilgrims would enter the mountain pass and disappear in the mist-shrouded heights, never to be heard from again. Wargs roved openly alongside bands of orcs and launched brutal raids on the woodsmen of Wilderland. On the banks of the Anduin, a shadow had fallen across the once peaceful woods of Erin Lasganen. Now called Mirkwood by men, the festering disease of Sauron soured the southern marches of that realm, emanating from the ruined fortress of Dol Guldur, his corruption reaching out with tendrils of shadow, smothering light and life from the surrounding woods. Great spiders skittered through the boughs, choking the trees with their webs and ensnaring unfortunate travelers to their doom. And of course, there was the looming but unspoken threat of Smaug the Golden. The men of Dale lived under the shadow of his menace, speaking with hushed voices and shooting furtive glances at the mountain, and the smoke gently rising from it in the distance. Far, but still all too near. This is the north that the company found themselves in, volatile, fractured, and ripe for the picking. The situation in the north would come to a head in 294 of the Third Age. With the death of Smaug at the hands of Bard the Bowman, the path to the mountain and its legendary riches was now open for the first time in 220 years. Many eyes shot hungry glances towards Erebor, yearning for the now undefended riches of the dwarves. The first to arrive would be the men of Dale, survivors of the destruction of Lake Town, alongside their allies, a host of Sylvan Elves from the Woodland Realm, led by their monarch, Thranduil. Next came Dane and a host of grim, bearded veterans from the Iron Hills, at the behest of Thorin Oakenshield. After negotiations broke down between both factions, small skirmishes erupted between the advancing dwarves and Thranduil's elves. Old hatreds were soon discarded, with the arrival of a great black host of wargs and goblins, burning and bleating its way through the lands behind, like a dark, writhing fire drake of old. Throughout the valley, to the dismay of elves, men, and dwarves, could be heard the beating of leathery wings, as swarms of vampire bats shadowed the host of the mountain on its road to war, and darkened the land with their passage. A small holding force of lakemen was dispatched to the valley to delay the onset of the enemy. The elves and the remaining men assembled their hosts and made their stand on the spurs of the valley, and Dane's folk along with them. The allies intended to take the goblins on 2 sides and together smash their host between them. But the goblins were in numbers that hadn't been seen for many centuries, and had sufficient strength to scale the spurs of the mountain and attack the defenders from below and above. Suddenly, trumpets blared, and the makeshift fortifications at the gate of Erebor tumbled open. Thorin and his company surged forward and joined the battle. All the dwarves of Dane's host, as well as many of the men of Lake Town who could not be restrained by their leader Bard, rallied to his side, and together they drove against the bodyguard of Bolg, the leader of the goblin host. At first they were successful, driving against the oncoming black tide, even reaching the ranks of Bolg himself. But soon their momentum was halted by the implacable ranks of large, savage orcs who comprised the bodyguard of their chieftain. The goblins howled as they swarmed against Thorin in a furious counterattack. Here, Fili and Kili, the youngest of the company, would die defending Thorin with body and shield. All hope for the free peoples faded away, until, from somewhere out on the battlefield, a small voice rang out with a cry of, the Eagles are coming." Gwaihir the Windlord had come along with many of his vassals. The eagles drove the goblins shrieking from the heights, or cast them into precipices. Despite the unexpected aid, the battle still raged on, with its outcome uncertain. Only with the arrival of Bjorn did the tide begin to truly turn. Bjorn broke upon the back ranks of the goblin host like a clap of thunder, rampaging his way through their lines until he came to a wounded Thorin, whom he bore away from the fray to safety. His wrath redoubled, Bjorn drove against the bodyguard of Bolg, scattering them and crushing their chief. The death of their leader shattered the goblins' morale, and they fled wildly in all directions, the victorious allies pursuing them far afield. Their victory was total. 3/4 of the goblin warriors of the north perished in that battle, and the north was free of their evil for many long years. But this came with a heavy cost. Thorin Oakenshield, king under the mountain, was mortally wounded, and with him fell many dwarves, men, and fair elves of the wood. In the aftermath, the kingdoms of Dale and Erebor were re-established, and the north again began to know stability and prosperity, at least for a while. And welcome everybody to the Battle of 5 Armies. You can see Dale down there in the valley, up in that raised plateau area, and just slightly southeast of that you can see a tower representing Ravenhill, which is where Thranduil's bodyguard is going to be making their stand. And there's a few things to note about this battle. There are some special rules that come into play. The first is that the goblins must attack right away. They're going to be coming through various means here, through the center, through these two wings here on either side of the river. They are also obliged to go up in this direction here. There will be a path that allows them to scale the spurs of the mountain, which is thanks to the battle, as we've already covered. They're going to be able to come all the way up here, around up to Ravenhill, and that's where Thranduil's bodyguard is going to be hanging out. After that, the body of Thorin can engage 3 minutes after the goblins begin to attack. 6 minutes after that, the eagles, you can see over here. At least I think they're over here. There are some eagles hanging around somewhere. And those eagles will be able to engage 6 minutes after Thorin's bodyguard joins the fray. And then finally, have some Bjornings here representing Bjorn, and they're going to be able to join the fight 3 minutes, I believe, after the eagles are in the battle. Oof, a little bit of lag there. So without any further ado, let's jump into this battle here. But first, let's take a look at some of the army compositions. We should do that first, eh? So we have the dwarves over here of the Iron Hills, being played by Titus. He's got Axguard of Erebor, 4 companies of them. He's also got some Sons of Durin, which will be up here. And they're going to be representing Dane on the battlefield today. In fact, I think there might even be 2 there. No, there's just 1. Another dwarf player here, played by Froggy. He's got Highborn of Erebor. This is to represent Thorin and his retinue. And then we have the host of the Elven King. Mostly spearmen, so a lot of spears of Emenduir here, some blades of Emenduir as well. More spears of Emenduir, some blades, and then another company of spearmen. There are a company of... God, I can't remember what they're called. They're the two-handed axe units. They might have had their name changed in the patch. I can't quite recall. And they're around here somewhere. They are able to hide, I believe, anywhere. And then up here, of course, we have the Elven King's bodyguard, the Elders of the Elven King, representing Thranduil. You can see Thranduil himself right there, overlooking this battlefield. And then we have the Army of Dale, finally. And that's going to be played by Stewart of Dale, who I believe made this map in addition to having organized it. So big thank you to him. Without him, we wouldn't have this video. So praise be. He has brought, or I suppose rather had assigned to him, a unit of Dalian Royal Guard. In addition to that, he's got some Bardian Marksmen, and then finally, some Dalian Spearmen. And I believe these guys are here to represent an ambushing force that was sent by the the men of Dale to ambush the dwarves initially, but then they end up fighting with the dwarves on this spur. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and see what the goblins have brought to the battle today. Alright, so one thing to note about the goblins, and I'm actually going to turn up the speed because this is the case, they have a ton of goblin infantry. A lot of that light goblin infantry, which can hide anywhere. And they have these units in spades. There is goblin infantry all over this valley, even if you can't see them yet. So let's take a look at the first goblin player. I'm not saying that. I will get demonetized. This is the player. He has a ton of goblin infantry, 4 or 5. It's really hard to tell. There's just so many of them. He's also got goblin archers, 2 units of them. Warg skirmishers represent some of the wolf riders present amongst the goblin army. More goblin infantry just literally popping out of the ground, and more of them as they appear. This is some real scary numbers, and I think it does accurately represent the scale of this goblin commitment here. We've got some mountain orc berserkers as well, so it's not all goblin infantry. A very scary army indeed. And the warg skirmishers here I think are going to be part of the vanguard. Over here in the center, we have BMK Overlord of the Dark Cloud. More goblin infantry. These ones look like they have armor upgrades, however. Got some warg riders here. Some mountain orc berserkers. Oof. A scary army here. It's a lot of numbers. More than enough to overwhelm the obviously huge quality disparity between both sides here. More and more goblin infantry just coming out of the woodwork. So we got some Snaga skirmishers here as well. And they're going to be rushing through this gap here out of the town of Dale and pushing towards the allied position. A lot of warg units here from BMK Overlord. And then we have another goblin player. This one is the Camping Panda. I think he's from the... I can't remember the name of that clan. Oh, I really should know. It might be the Hobbits. Something about the Hobbits. I could be wrong, though. But in any case, he's got warg riders. 1 unit of them here. Another company of warg riders. And then a ton of goblin infantry. And he's actually going to break a lot of them off and send them around here. So this is going to be the flanking force that scales the spur of the mountain to attack the elves, men, and dwarf from above, while their companions move in from below. Let's go ahead and kick it into full speed here. Looks like we had some Woodland Realm Patrol who were hiding, setting up their stakes, and they are going to flee in the face of those warg riders' advance, and rightly so, I feel. Yeah, those are some potentially very scary units to use against the Woodland Realm Patrol. They do have good melee defense, but if a unit of cavalry rides through them and they're surrounded, well, they're going to take pretty heavy casualties. They'll probably be able to fight off warg skirmishers, but oof, it'll be an ugly affair indeed. Warg skirmishers tossing their jabs in here. Looks like Death Eater playing as the elves. I don't think I mentioned it was Death Eater, but Death Eater's playing as the elves. And he's got a very closely packed formation here, and that's going to make him easier targets, actually, for the warg skirmishers. Ooh, and they're reaping a deadly and bloody harvest amongst the ranks of these Emendur spears. Gotta get my metaphors and terminology correct. And he's gonna have some sallies here and try and drive these skirmishers back, maybe catch them out if he can. Ooh, but they're just doing a lot of damage to these poor elves. Woodland Realm Patrol finally in a position where they can fire back. Doesn't seem like he really wants to use a lot of his ammunition on these warg skirmishers, but honestly, a few volleys I think would be enough to make BMK Overlord think twice about just walking up to his infantry line here and just tossing javelins into them. There's a lot of dead units there. A lot of elves, and the number disparity is ever widening with every volley from these javelin wargs. Over here, looks like the dwarves have decided to fall back up a little bit higher up the spear, and the Dalian spearmen seem to be making for this little pass right here to try and block the orcs here from being able to reinforce their allies on the other side of the river, getting behind and into the flanks of Death Eater's elven host, which is a good play, I feel, on the part of Stewart of Dale. Ooh, wow. That's a lot of damage being done to these units here. I think they start with like 130. That's significant. These guys as well. Oof, a lot of dead elves here before any goblin infantry has even made their way into the valley. And here they come. The maggot folk of the mountains sallying forward here in terrifying numbers. Imagine being an elf or a man on the other side of this. Look at this horde. Just no semblance of order. Just nothing but fury. Fury and hatred for the elves and the dwarves who have been their mortal enemies for a very, very long count of years. Death Eater has no choice. He's trapped in the valley. He's got to sit here, and he's got to accept that charge. And now that the dwarves have fallen back here and gone a little bit farther up the hill, the men of Dale are stranded down here, and the orcs have pretty well free reign in the valley here. There's nothing to stop them. No other target that they have that's really viable than to set up all of their archers here and lay down some devastating, enfilading fire into the lightly armed elves of Mirkwood. And it looks like the first clashes here have begun. The elven spearmen breaking up the charge here from the goblins, and then falling back towards the line to try and set up a unified front here and avoid having themselves stretched out and surrounded. Elves falling, orcs falling on either side. Looks like a countercharge here from the elves of Thranduil. And the spearmen push forward. When the goblin infantry seem to be getting the upper hand in these initial classes, fighting against the woodland spears, blades of Emenduir have been brought in, and this is really a lot of the killing power of the elven army. Over on the other side, though, things are looking a little bit better. Oh yeah, the spears have managed to bottle them up quite nicely. The casualties weren't so high here from the wargs as they were on Death Eater's left wing. Let's go ahead and slow things down just a little bit here. And now that range support is just pouring in. There's still some infantry reserves up there, some spears and some blades. And the Woodland Realm Patrol alongside, well, some more Woodland Realm Patrol. I think the Elite Axemen have not been committed to the fray just yet. Oh, Wardens of Amonlike, yes indeed. Here they come. And this is where the elves seem to be strongest, but the archer companies are just pouring fire into the center here. And they are managing to stabilize things. Just look at the damage that they've done in such a short amount of time. And those archers are slaughtering the goblins while the spearmen pin them in place. It's not going all their way, however. The alien spearmen doing well here against goblin infantry, managing to hold back the black tide. But how long can they conceivably do so? Goblin archers here, firing now into the exposed rear of the elven host. This is bad. They are starting to gain the upper hand with counterfire from their own archers, but these units will not last long under that kind of sustained fire. Look at the clashes here. These guys are just... The valley is thick now with corpses and slick with the black blood of goblins and orcs. But it's only a drop in the bucket. Ah, some deadly javelin fire coming in now against the Wardens of Amonlike. Really important unit there for the elves. One of the only, like, genuinely high-tier offensive units that they have aside from Thranduil's bodyguard. And they're getting eaten by those Snaga skirmishers. Great play here on the part of BMK Overlord. Super cost-effective use of his javelins. And they're just an easy target for the Wardens. The blades moving in, of Emenduir moving in now, as they are obliged to do. Hopefully those shields will protect the Wardens of Amonlike a little bit. Second line of spears forming up here in the center. But there's really not a lot of help here that can come for the left. I don't think the Death Eater has the numbers left over, unless he's got some of his woodland patrol here. I think maybe that's what they're doing. Yep, they're definitely focusing down these Mountain Orc Berserkers, looking to destroy them before they can completely rout the wing. But these spears here are in a very, very tough spot. Blades of Emenduir holding out as best they can. And some reinforcements, some boots on the ground here in the form of the Woodland Patrol, getting themselves into position and charging headlong into the rear of those Mountain Orc Berserkers. And they are starting to die like flies. But still the Goblin Archers on the other side remaining more or less unopposed, although the Dwarves of Erebor have rallied. Or rather, the Dwarves of the Iron Hill, I should say, have rallied and pushed down the hill. And they're not letting the Goblins have it all their own way. They've relieved the Spearmen of Dale, who looked like maybe they were going to move over here and try and support the Elves, but I think they might be moving back. Thorin and company have joined the battle. The gates of Erebor have crumbled and swung open, and Thorin, king under the mountain, has emerged forth, and he is driving hard into the host of the mountains. And there's not a lot that these goblin units can do about it. They're now silencing the goblin archers, the men of Dale rallying behind him and pushing forward, as are the dwarves of the Iron Hills. And this is just a superb battle. Very destructive, and the goblins here coming in with another wave of goblin infantry, trying to staunch the bleeding, but there is just not enough of them, at least on this side of the river, to really be able to stop the devastating charge of these axemen. Behind the lines here, we can see a warg unit. This may be, no, just some warg skirmishers. All right. Some Bardian marksmen. Looks like they were engaged in a skirmish fight with the goblin units, and they took some really heavy losses, but now they are in a great position to be able to return the favor. Another wave of goblin infantry, fresh recruits here, moving in to pin the dwarves of Erebor in place. And victory is far from the grasp of the Free Peoples at this point. They have only just destroyed a drop in the bucket of what the goblins have to offer. Spears of Emendweir here engaged against Warg Riders from the Camping Panda. Some support here from the Elders of the Elven King from Death Eater, raining down death and destruction upon their foes in the valley. And now the Snaga Skirmishers are about to be engaged in melee as the Elves of the Woodland Realm manage to break through, and look at that. A lot of dead goblins down here in the valley. But yet there is more fresh troops here. That has got to be devastating to the morale of the defenders here. Thousands upon thousands of goblins and wargs rushing their way into the valley, but hope is kindled. Here we have the Eagles, controlled by Chris Almighty, who I believe is also known as... I can't remember his name. I can't remember the other name. I should probably know it, but I can't remember it. And then the Eagles here, charging down into the wargs. I don't think he wants to get them stuck in there for too long against the Warg Riders. These guys are technically elephants, I believe. I know they might actually be cavalry, which means that the wargs have a pretty good bonus against them. Some of the Eagles have actually fallen there in those initial engagements, but Blindness, that's his name. Blindness has split his forces here, so now the orcs aren't going to be able to pursue all of them at once, and this is going to be potentially a turning point for the elves, who are very much on their last legs at this point. Relentless warg charges hammering their way through what remains of their light infantry. Now the archer company is being committed to the fray as well. Some warg skirmishers here have managed to push their way across the valley. Now that the spearmen of Dale have moved in support of the dwarves of Erebor. Unless they're dead somewhere. I could be wrong. Oh, I see what they've done. They've moved over here to try and support the elves. Now that Thorin and the dwarves of the Iron Hills seem to have things under control. They're doing their best to support the failing elven line, but they have now pushed forward out of their defensive positions, and here we have the Eagles massacring their way through that goblin infantry. Look at the destruction that they can cause. And now a lot of these reinforcements from the goblins, it was looking great for them for a moment, but with the Eagles on their back lines, it seems like it's starting to turn around, although how long that's going to be the case is hard to tell, because we have a huge cloud of wargs. Ooh, nasty rear charge here from some warg riders into the Spears of Emendweir. Looks like Death Eater didn't even see it coming and didn't have time to turn around. Snaga skirmishers here being massacred by the Great Eagles. Those Eagles are just marauding in the back lines, swooping around, dealing what damage they could, trying to relieve the beleaguered elves. We've got some breaking here, actually, so the goblin infantry do not like being attacked by eagles, and I don't blame them. The wargs now marauding in the back, trying to counter the damage that the eagles are doing to their back. Is it going to be enough, or is it going to be too little too late? Seems like the eagles are now in a lot of trouble with the arrival of the wargs. But if they can just get a really good charge or two into the back of these goblin infantry blobs, who's to say what's going to happen? A big rout here. 111 goblin infantry running away. Some fresh reinforcements moving in to replace them. Seemingly no end to their numbers. And the spears here, along with, I think there's some blades been mixed in there as well. I mean, a couple companies of spears doing their best to push things back and hold the line. Woodland Patrol here, surrounded on all sides and just run over by those wargs. And that might just crush their will to fight. Certainly taking a big bite out of their numbers. Some of the goblins starting to rout, though. It's an opportune moment there, I think. The Elders of the Elven King now descending from the heights. Now, where is that flanking force? And the flanking force from Camping Panda. These exhausted goblins, nonetheless, in great numbers, coming down the spur of the mountain. And things look dire for the Free People. 68%. The goblins have a 7% lead, and they already have a massive, massive advantage in numbers. Bolg's champions, the bodyguard of Bolg himself, joining the fray here and putting an end to this pocket of elven resistance. Ooh. And looks like Bolg is down to just himself and one other bodyguard member. No, I think this is Bolg himself. It's the same, like, leader unit. Oh, dear. Looks like that's the end of one of the goblin generals. Bad news bears for them. I think Bolg is going to be able to limp away from that fight. Supporting fire coming down from the Elven King Elders, trying to deal with these wargs. Over on this side, it seems like the dwarves have been largely victorious. Oh, look at this. With the help of the eagles, they managed to rout off all of those goblins that we saw earlier, and it is a massacre. Complete slaughterhouse. This is what the Free Peoples needed. Look at that. Look at the destruction that has been wrought on this valley by the heavily armed warriors of Durin's folk. And this is good news. Once they deal with the remnants of those berserkers, they will be able to move over here and try and support the elves. Although how long will the elven host hold on for? Dale has moved over, and there's small pockets of elven resistance being aided by the Dalian Royal Guard. But how long are these guys going to be able to hold on against these numbers? Spearmen of Dale here have now been broken by a charge from the rear by some Bolg champions. Looks like Bolg himself, despite being down to just one member of his bodyguard, has managed to have a massive impact on the battle, disproportionate to his unit size. And those units are going to rout right through the goblin infantry. And that's going to be it for the Spearmen of Dale. Yep, they're going to be cut down pretty well to the last man. And that leaves the only pocket of resistance over here. That still remains in the valley here on the elven side of things, having rallied around the Dalian Royal Guard. This is what's keeping them in the fight. Oh yeah, these wargs here are being preyed upon very heavily by the Elders of the Elven King from Death Eater. They've still got that other elite unit up there, but it hasn't joined the fray down in the valley yet. Nasty. Brutal damage there into those warg riders. And more goblin reinforcements on the way. Some of the Snaga have come back from routing. There's still a huge number of warg riders, and they're now making their way towards the elven side of the valley. And this is going to be... This is, I think, the deciding moment right here. We've got Highborn of Erebor, so Thorin and his company charging forward to try and staunch the bleeding. Most of the Free People's units, aside from the dwarves, who have a fair amount of heavy infantry left, most of it comes down to their elite units. Elders of the Elven King, the Dalian Royal Guard, and now these winded Highborn of Erebor. What we got here? Warg skirmishers. Not having a great time. Getting preyed upon by the Elders of the Elven King. Decent amount of damage being done to them, and they're definitely the big threat at this point. Thorn and company being intercepted by some goblin infantry, and I think we're going to see them get the same treatment as the Spearmen of Dale and some of the other units from the Elven host as well. BMK Overlord is going to try and use his massive cavalry advantage to try and get behind the company of Thorin and crush them. That's really the only hope that the goblins have to win this. Some devastating hammer and anvil strikes that sap the strength of these elite units, because the goblin infantry is not going to cut it. It's going to be down to the cavalry play from the goblin side to see if they can pull out a victory. Looks like still some eagles left over here as well from from blindness. And now the Dwarves of Erebor have arrived on the other side. Sons of Durin still doing very well for themselves. Got some Party and Marksmen there. And some Axemen of Erebor as well. So things are looking decent for the Free Peoples. Still, the percentage does favor the Goblins by about 10%. BMK is going to be, I think, very wise to not get his troops hooked on them. And there it is, the rear charges into the Highborn of Erebor. And they're trying to withstand it, and they will for some time. But being surrounded like this, it's not going to be a good thing for them. And the Eagles have now joined the fray, preying on the Goblin infantry, doing massive damage to them. But the Wargs, again, the real big menace in this fight for what remains for the Free People, moving to intercept the Eagles and to engage them. Got some braking here, and the Dalian Railguard are going to have a brief reprieve. Now the Wargs are charging in. The Wolves have come, and they have come to feast on man, elf, and dwarf alike. And they're really the lifeline of the Goblins still remaining in this battle. Look at that, more braking here. Both sides have basically converged entirely with everything that they have on this side of the fray. Thorn and company looking very much worse for wear. We could see the fall of their mighty leader, but it looks like Beorn has joined the fray as well. And the mighty bears are cleaving a bloody path through those Goblin skirmishers, the Warg skirmishers. And that's a lot of dead Wargs there. I think that they managed to save Thorin, at least for the time being. And now the Goblins have been routed off, and the Free Peoples are converging on them, trying to deal with this cavalry, routed off, whatever they can do to put an end to the chances that the Goblins have of snatching victory out of their grasp. Oh, there's still some Eagles here. There's a decent company of Eagles there, about 5 or so Eagles. I think blindness is moving. Oh, that might have been the death of one of the Elven generals, or maybe I think that was the death of Bard, in fact. Some Wargs here have broken up his position. And the Dalian Royal Guard looking very, very haggard. 12 of them still remaining. And there we go. The Goblin infantry routing off. The Elders of the Elven King have joined the fray, but they're down to 32 men as well. Bjorning's crashing into the ranks of the Warg Riders. It's hard to tell whose general that was. That might have been the general for this unit. I could be incorrect, but damn, they took a lot of casualties there, actually. The Wargs swarming against them in such numbers. Very scary, but the Sons of Durin, representing the bodyguard of Dane, gonna get in there. But BMK Overlord wisely does not want any of that. And so he's gonna pull back with his cloud of Wargs. Snaga Skirmishers targeting those units as they move forward, trying to bleed the Free Peoples and sap what remaining strength they have. Elders of the Elven King pushing against some reformed Goblin infantry and the position of the Snaga Skirmishers, looking to knock them out of the fight for good. Two big clashes here between the Elves and their hated enemies, the Goblins, smashing their way through those Goblin infantry, and a massive amount of Durin's folk who are gonna crash equally through this thin line of Goblin infantry and put them to the rout. BMK Overlord is not idle, however. He's going to go in with a cavalry charge here, and because of the melee defense being lower on the Axemen and the Sons of Durin, this is actually going to be very effective. And as long as he doesn't stay in combat for too long with these Axemen and their high damage and their armor piercing, this is a strategy that can potentially work to whittle down the remaining numbers. I think Thorin Oakenshield right in the middle of the fight there too, still kicking, surprisingly enough. He's been through hell and back. I mean, he was fighting hard on the other side, very much in the vanguard. He's come across here, engaged those Goblins, and then got attacked from all sides by the Warg swarm of BMK Overlord and his allies, and nonetheless has managed to come through it unscathed. Remaining Barding Marksmen, looks like they cut down a Goblin general. Hard to tell whose. I don't think it's Bolg, though. I think Bolg is still around. I'm like 90% sure that is the case. We'll look for him in a little bit. All these Warg skirmishers here just broke in the face of the Axemen of Erebor. Another big charge coming in here from the Warg Riders. And it's going to hurt. The dwarves are definitely going to feel it. Oh yeah, look at that. Now they're going to countercharge here as well. While these wargs are in close quarters, these wargs are going to start to die off like the dogs that they are. Oof, nasty. Might have seen some routing there, or something very, very close to it. That was a pretty brutal exchange there between both sides. Alien Royal Guard still in the fight. Is Bard in fact dead? No, he's not. What do you know? He's still kicking. I don't know which general died in that case. Maybe it was one of the general in like one of the warg units or something. But the Goblin infantry is shattered, but still going very strong in the cavalry department. Although they are beginning to ebb away. Oh, still 50 warg riders here. 47 in the other unit. Fight's not done yet. Some more warg skirmishers got caught out here and devoured by this Death Star of dwarven infantry and elvish elites. Looks like BMK is going to go for something decisive here. Thorin Oakenshield getting charged down. He's going to come in from behind, and this blob is not going to be able to stop him. Their mobility is very, very limited, and oh no, disaster! The goblins have now come down from the heights. Bardian marksmen moving in to support Blindness's Bjornings, who are doing their best to finish these units off and prevent them from coming to the aid of the cavalry. That would be disastrous. Meanwhile, over here, Warg Riders moving for a full surround. Beautiful rear charge here from BMK Overlord, and that is going to kill one of the Dwarven generals, I believe. Devastating attack there. And it looks like these Warg Riders are going to lose some of their number, but that was very much worth it. And now the infantry of Durin's folk looking very much worse for wear. You can see a lot of them dead on the ground here, and that's down to BMK's really strong cavalry play. But it looks like the unit that dealt the death blow to the Dwarven general is going to rout off. They're going to rout through Dwarven infantry, and I don't think we'll be seeing them come back. Meanwhile, over here, Goblins moving to try and assist their allies, but they are being blocked by everything that Dale can throw at them. Got some Bardian marksmen in the back there. I think they're out of ammo. Nope, they're engaged in close quarters with some of the Goblin remnants. The Dalian Royal Guard here holding their ground, holding the line here against just a tide of Goblins who have come out of nowhere. I think these guys are very much forgotten by the other side, but it looks like we have a mass rout here. Beautiful teamwork here on the part of Dale and Blindness, managing to rout these exhausted Goblins off of the map. That is huge. Oh, speaking of huge, another devastating charge here by the Warg Riders into the remnants of the Dwarven infantry, and they are slaughtering them. They're taking damage in return. You can see a lot of dead wargs here, and now Chris has come to the succor of his allies, trying to get a piece of those Warg Riders, maybe rout them off for good. He might have a chance here if he keeps up the pressure and the momentum with those Bjornings, but it looks like the Warg Riders of BMK Overlord are going to manage to slip away and escape justice once again. So few of the dwarves left, and a lot of their army perished here, but so did a lot of the wargs as well. And unless these units are continuously harried, we might see some of these Goblin units begin to reform, which would be a problem. I'm not sure where the Elders of the Elven King are at this point, or if they're even still alive. Well, the Highborn of Erebor, still 20 of them. That's pretty significant at this point in the battle. So the Sons of Durin are being thrown at the remnants of the Warg Riders over here. Oof. And one of those wargs just got a massive amount of kills there. I think these units are going to start to rout off. Yeah, that was a huge advantage in infantry that they used to have, and now the Warg Riders have managed to cut that down to size. More Goblin infantry. It's hard to tell. Oh, these Barding marksmen have been surrounded and slaughtered by the Goblin infantry. I think there's still Dalian Royal Guard, not many of them. Ooh, he's going to want to be careful. Oh, went right through those stakes. Desperate times call for desperate measures, I suppose. The remaining healthy elites, 18 Elven King's Elders and 20 Highborn of Erebor, converging on the Goblin infantry here and managing to rout them off. If you look back in the valley here, the Goblins have found their courage again and screwed it to the sticking place, and back into the fray they go. It looks like Blindness might have something to say about that, though. Let's go ahead, kick it up to full speed now. Ooh. big charge there from the Bjornings. Slaughtering those goblins and putting them to rout almost immediately. And another charge here from the Elven King's Elders, who I believe cause fear. Getting a rear charge into the Goblin Infantry, and they are going to rout off in short order as well. Dashing the Goblins' hopes for victory. Still, the Goblins have a numerical advantage. Incredible. At this point in the battle, 2% left of the Free People's armies, and there's a 10% difference there. That's pretty big. What do we got over here? Axe Guard of Erebor. There's Bolg. There he is. Bjornings are once again not going to be able to get him. Bjorn wants to crush him. Trying to keep it historically accurate, I suppose. I don't know if he's going to be able to get him, though. Because he's going to go after the Elders of the Elven King. Ooh. Oh, no. Oh, he's going to miss his charge because these guys did not stop moving. Brilliant work on the part of Death Eater. And now, Azog is out in the open. If those Bjornings just get a little bit closer, they might be able to rout off the Warg Rider as well. I think they're going to be able to do it. Nope. Maybe not. Still anybody's guess. Sons of Durin. And there he goes. Vengeance for Durin's folk. Bolg is slain. Have I called him Azog or Bolg? I've probably called him Bolg throughout the entirety of this battle. But Bolg is slain by the last two remaining heavy infantry of the dwarves of the Iron Hills. Brilliant, brilliant work here. Still a few goblins circling back, but the victorious allies are going to chase them throughout the valley. Another big charge there, smashing that goblin infantry unit. I think this is going to be the last that we see of them. Yeah, these guys are almost certainly going to rout off, and there they go. The Bjornings are going to ride right through them and inflict heavy, heavy losses. I don't think we're going to see them reform at this point. I believe maybe there's some like goblins that are just hanging out up here at this point. I could be wrong. There's still another 3k left, and there's not really much left of the goblin army. So what I'm going to do is fast forward just a little bit, and I'll see you guys in just a few minutes. Looks like I didn't have to fast forward too long. Some goblin infantry here, fighting against the remains of the Dalian Royal Guard. And there goes Bard. Oh, a tragic day. Bard the Bowman, the slayer of Smaug, has been destroyed, and then they rout off just a second later. Just would have needed literally one more second to save the life of one of the greatest heroes of the Third Age. Big smash there by the Bjornings into the goblin infantry. That's pretty well going to be all she wrote. I think that Thorin, he's still alive. Thorin lives, but Bard dies. A little bit of alternate history here for you, but look at the destruction in this valley. Let's get down and close with it. Really get a sense of how brutal this combat was for both sides, and surprisingly well balanced. Numbers were very much on the goblin side, but the quality was all on the allied end, aside from that one unit of Bolg's champions, but just so destructive. And I think now there are some goblin units that are hanging around up here. So I'm going to go ahead, we're going to fast forward and wait for these Bjornings to suss out the remnants of the goblin army, and then we can take a look at the after battle screen. Yep, here we go. A few ragtag goblin units making a last stand here on the gatehouse, on top of the gatehouse of Erebor. And you can see those exhausted Bjornings charging uphill here. But they shouldn't have too much trouble seeing off these goblins. We're going to watch them do it, just for the sake of completion. These goblins steel themselves for what's to come. Well, that's a big, ugly hit there. It didn't rout them off immediately. Took a moment, and now they're gone. There's one more unit here, and a final charge should be enough to finish them off. Oh no, it didn't do as much damage, I think, as he needed it to. Oh, and then a charge on the flank there. That's going to be enough. And that'll be the end of those goblins. And I don't think there's any more. Oh no, someone like immediately came back. I guess there's a couple units in there. And now that's going to be the end of them. Brutal, brutal fight. See, Captain Thranduil, Death Eater's army did so well. Thorin didn't have too many units, but still managed to make a big impact. Dane did very well, 1,600 goblins on his side. They managed to eventually kill Azog. Did I say Azog? Bolg. It's Bolg. I'm confusing the Hobbit movies with the actual book, which I don't even like the Hobbit movies. I don't know why I would do that. And Captain Gandalf, representing the sort of elements of like the free peoples and natural like beings, Bjorn, Eos, etc. And then you have Bard there as well, Bard the Bowman. Despite having a fairly small army, managed to get himself a lot of kills, nearly 1,000 kills with just 3 units. Very impressive indeed. Bolg and his army certainly did the best, and then his sub-commanders here, Malnog and Magnur. I'm not too sure who is who. I think Bolg would have been BMK's army. That would have made the most sense. Doing fairly decent as well, getting a lot of kills there on the Free Peoples. Both sides were just annihilated in this. Take a look at some casualties there. 440 on the Daily and Royal Guard, 446 rather. 256 on the Marksman, and the Spearmen did alright with 221 as well. They did get routed off at fairly high strength, so I think if they managed to fight for longer, they probably would have gotten more. But yeah, so there you go. I hope you guys have enjoyed this battle. If you guys enjoy this kind of content, let me know. I do also have a Patreon, which I don't really flog very often, but it is there, so if you want to support the channel in that way, then that's something you can do as well. The links are always in my like big blurb in my descriptions. Yeah, you can find Discord and everything else that you'd want to know. So other Third Age channels as well will be in the description of this video. I recommend that you check them out because they all make content on a much more regular basis than I do, in fact. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this battle. Hope you enjoyed the history behind it, and I'll see you all next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.